Good morning, fifth grade. We're going to start on chapter 2, lesson 1 today, which is why did the Spanish explore the Americas? Let's go ahead and get this a little larger for us. You can read it. All right, a time of change in Europe. During the Middle Ages, the period between ancient and modern times, most Europeans rarely traveled. However, toward the end of the period, they began making pilgrimages, or religious journeys, to Christian holy sites. Some went as far away as areas in the Middle East considered the Holy Land by Jews, Christians, and Muslims. The contact with new regions made Europeans desire goods from foreign lands. Soon, a new class of Europeans developed, merchants, who made their living by buying and selling goods. They prospered, especially in its Italian port cities like Venice. They traded for gems, silks, and spices of China and the East Indies, the islands off Southeast Asia. Members of one of the Venetian families, the Polos, actually traveled to China themselves and met with the great ruler Kublai Khan. On a second journey, they took 17-year-old Marco Polo. He returned to Italy years later and told of the wonders he had seen. His impressions were recorded in a book now called The Travels of Marco Polo, which further stirred people's imaginations. Another person who encouraged Europeans to travel to new lands was Prince Henry of Portugal, whose sailors explored the west coast of Africa in the early 1400s. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at our timeline for this lesson. So it says in 1295, Marco Polo returns from China. In 1425, Prince Henry of Portugal begins sponsoring explorations of the west coast of Africa. 1453, the Ottoman Turks capture Constantinople. In 1488, we have Portugal's Bartholomew Dias sails around Africa to the Indian Ocean. In 1492, we have Christopher Columbus reaches the Americas. 1498, Portugal's Vasco da Gama reaches India by sea. And in 1522, we have Spanish Magellan Elcano expedition completes the voyage around the world. Some of these should sound a little familiar from yesterday's video with the opening when we did some of the timeline. So this is what we'll see in this lesson. Trade with Asia usually moved along a route called the Silk Road. It was named for a product much in demand, Chinese silk. Sometimes goods from China came by sea, because the Chinese had made many advances in sailing. Goods from the East Indies also came partly by sea, but whether entirely or only partly over land, the trade from Asia had to pass through the Middle East to reach the Mediterranean Sea and Italy. In 1453, the Ottoman Turks captured Constantinople, which is now in Istanbul, Turkey. They cut off most European trade through the Middle East. European leaders began to sponsor or pay for voyages of exploration. They hoped to make their countries rich by finding new trade routes that did not go through the Middle East. Important advances in navigation, or the science of guiding a boat, made this possible. During the Age of Exploration, Europe was bursting with religious conflict and change. Spain wished to become an even more powerful country after recapturing land it had lost to invading peoples from North Africa. Spaniards called this violent recapturing of the territory the Reconquista. The Protestant Reformation caused many people who were upset with the Roman Catholic Church to break away and form new churches. Some people wished to stay and improve the Catholic Church in an effort called the Counter-Reformation. Competing religions, ideas, and countries would become key drivers for the Age of Exploration. And these are merchants trading in Venice, Italy. All right, so on this map, it says the travels of Marco Polo, 1271 to 1295. So you can see the Silk Road that they spoke of that went through the Middle East, and that's in green. So they traveled up here or up through here. And then you can also see in red the route of Marco Polo that he took to travel from Venice into China and then back to his home again. All right, I'm going to quickly go through this infographic that talks about different technological advances because we'll read and we'll hear a few of these names later on in this chapter. So, the technological advances. The Spanish explored the Americas in a time of adventure and discovery. A number of technological advances helped to make their adventures and Portugal's explorations possible. So, we have the astrolabe, which is right here in this picture. And an astrolabe measures the position of the stars in the sky. It helps sailors determine a ship's latitude or how far north or south of the equator they are. Europeans learned of the astrolabe from Arab traders in the 1100s. Then we have the compass. A compass has a magnetic arrow that points north so that people can figure out in which direction they are going. The compass was invented in China and introduced to Europeans in the 1200s, probably by Arab sailors. And then we have the stern rudder. Chinese sailors used an oar that hung off the stern or the back of the boat, so you can see that right here in this picture, to help control the direction in which the boat sailed. This evolved into the stern-mounted rudder, which directed the flow of water passing over it to help steer a ship. By the 1400s, European shipbuilders had adopted and improved the stern-mounted rudder. Next, we have the printing press. Around 1450, German inventor Johannes Gutenberg built Europe's first printing press that used movable type to print the text. Printed materials could be mass-produced far more easily and cheaply than handwritten documents. They helped spread the news about explorers' discoveries and encouraged others to take the seas. So this was a really cool invention because before this printing press, if anybody wanted a copy of a book, some person would have to handwrite it and completely copy the entire book down. Now we could have it typed out and then we could print it and mass produce it so it would make it cheaper to be able to sell these books. And we'll read a little bit about what was the first book that was mass produced. Next, we have the carrack. The carrack was a 3 or 4 masted sailing ship developed in the Italian city of Genoa in the late 1400s. It was very strong and useful on long voyages. The Santa Maria, the ship on which Columbus sailed to the Americas, was a carrack. We have the sextant and the chronometer. In 1759, John Bird invented the sextant. This tool uses 2 mirrors and a movable arm to measure the angles of stars in the sky. Also invented in the middle of the 18th century, the chronometer is a device that helps keep accurate time at sea. These 2 devices finally allowed sailors to determine longitude or the distance east or west of the prime meridian. Measuring longitude as well as latitude made navigation and map making more accurate. So we'll look at the stop and check here. I want you to answer this question for me. So it says, based on what you've just read, how important do you think technology was in encouraging the explorers of the day? And I'm going to have you type this into the box. Continuing with a sea route to the Indies. By the late 1400s, Europeans knew that China and the islands off Southeast Asia had great riches. Explorers from Portugal, such as Bartolomeu Dias and Vasco da Gama, were trying to reach these lands. They wanted to sail around the southern tip of Africa and then across the Indian Ocean. Christopher Columbus, a sailor from Genoa, Italy, had a different idea. He believed that he could reach the East Indies more quickly by sailing west across the Atlantic Ocean, known then as the Ocean Sea. He did not know the North and South American continents would get in the way. He persuaded King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, Portugal's neighbor and rival, to pay for his voyage. In return, he would claim lands and open valuable trade for Spain. In August, on August 3rd of 1492, Columbus sailed from Spain with 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. For weeks, the ships traveled across unknown waters. Finally, on October 12th, a member of the crew called the lookout spotted land. Columbus would call the island he reached San Salvador. Today, we know it as part of the Bahama Islands. A native people called the Taino warmly greeted his crew. The 2 groups exchanged gifts. So, in this primary source here, Christopher Columbus talks about how he gave gifts to the natives and the natives gave gifts to him. But that wasn't all that happened during this time. So if you think about it, when we talked about the cultures of the Native Americans and the Europeans, we talked about how their cultures clashed. We talked about how they had different ideas and views on owning land and owning property, and their languages were different. We also talked about how a lot of the impact that the Europeans had on the Native Americans were negative. And Christopher Columbus is no different. So it wasn't all, hey, we all get along and we're trading gifts. Christopher Columbus actually ended up murdering a lot of the Native Americans at the time. So it wasn't all this great experience. It might have been in Columbus's eyes, but for the Native Americans, not so much. So I just want you to kind of think on the other side of this and not always take a textbook for its words all the time, and do other research. So if you look up other research on Christopher Columbus, you'll find more information. Not that everything he did was horrible, but not everything he did was good either. So just kind of throwing that out there for you. So continuing then, looking at the voyages of Columbus, so we can kind of look and see where he traveled to and from. So obviously he traveled from Spain. So his first voyage is here in purple. So he landed first at San Salvador. When he went on his second voyage, he traveled a little bit more up into where Cuba is in Hispaniola. And his third voyage, around over here he went down into the South America, up into around Puerto Rico. His fourth voyage would be in yellow here, and here's where he actually hit more of now places where we're in Mexico and down around this middle America. And then a quick did you know? Because he thought he had reached the East Indies, Columbus called the people he encountered Indios, Spanish for Indians. The name stuck, even though it was an error. The people Columbus actually met, the Taino, did not survive long after the coming of the Spanish. This was due to diseases introduced by the Spanish, as well as harsh treatment, enslavement, starvation, and warfare. However, some of their culture is still evident in certain English and Spanish words, such as barbecue and hurricane. So those came from the Taino language. But this is what I was kind of talking about here. So those explorers brought over disease. They were not nice to the natives. They may have enslaved them, not given them food, gone to war with them. And so many of those Taino people actually died because of that. So continuing on his first voyage, Columbus sailed to several neighboring islands. In addition to the Bahamas, he still believed he had landed in the East Indies, but nowhere did he find the riches of Indies. Claiming the islands for Spain, he reported his discoveries to Ferdinand and Isabella when he returned home. The king and queen soon sent him back on a second voyage to extend Spanish claims, meaning to claim more land for Spain. This time, he brought enough settlers and supplies to establish a Spanish colony and the island he named Hispaniola. The present-day countries of Haiti and the Dominican Republic are now located on the island. In all, Columbus made 4 voyages to the area. Other explorers soon followed. By now, they knew that the islands were not the East Indies, but part of a massive lands between Europe and Asia, a new world, as they called it. The name Americas began to be used for the lands in honor of Amerigo Vespucci, who sailed one of Columbus's routes in 1499. In 1513, Vasco Nunez de Balboa became the first Spanish explorer to record seeing the great waters to the west of these lands. Another explorer, Ferdinand Magellan, named those waters the Pacific Ocean. Magellan died as he attempted to sail around the world. His voyage was completed in 1522 by his crew under the command of Juan Sebastian Elcano. The voyage took 3 years. So Magellan tried to sail around the world. He ended up dying on that voyage, but it was finished under the command of Juan Sebastian Elcano. And the picture here is a Taino artifact. Remember, the Taino were the people that Columbus first encountered when he landed at the Americas. All right, we have another map here, and this shows the Taino lands, which present-day places of the names are shown there. So here is where Columbus first landed. So San Salvador is there, and these are the Bahama Islands. Then we have parts of Cuba, Hispaniola, which is the Dominican Republic, and Haiti. And then we have Puerto Rico and Jamaica here, so you can see that. So I want you to look at this picture, okay? You can see the different bodies of water here, here, and here. So I want you to type those in and tell me the 3 bodies of water that surround the Taino lands where Columbus landed. All right, so lastly, I want you to look at the stop and check. And we're going to talk about this a little bit, and then you're going to have to answer it for me. So listen closely. It says, what did the Magellan-Elcano voyage prove that Columbus was right about? How did it prove that he was wrong about some things? So remember, Columbus said, hey, if I sail west from Spain, then I will be able to get to the Indies. And he didn't get to the Indies. He actually landed in North and South America. So think about it, though. Magellan and Elcano voyage was able to sail all the way around the world, and they did reach the Indies. So how was Columbus right about that? Okay, because were they able to actually sail west to get to the Indies? All right. But how did it prove that he was wrong about some things as well? So think about it. Did he get straight to the Indies from traveling west? No, he didn't. Okay. It was actually a much longer route to get to the Indies by traveling west, because they had to sail down and around the tip of South America and all the way through the Pacific Ocean to get back to the Indies.